All right. Good morning, everybody. As you can see, I'm here alone this morning because I wanted to come on here and talk to my audience. It's good morning, good afternoon. I don't know where you're at, wherever you're at. Just I'm saying hello to you. That's really what I'm saying. We're calling this podcast 2024 the year of difference. And later on, I will explain to you why we're calling this the podcast 2024 the year of difference. But first off, I want to say this. If you've been listening, I appreciate it. Glad you're listening. I hope that we are giving you what you want to hear. We've had some fabulous guests on here from Jason, who is a good friend of mine, and he talked about business, to Damaris, to Felicia and Stephanie, who gave you some insight on what it's like to get a contract with them and what it takes and some of the things that you need to have to actually get a contract and to be consistent in business, right? Especially as DBEs and SBEs. But the show that I particularly liked was show number 4 with Lysandra and Helen. We're calling it the Battle of Sexes, or no, Networking Among the Sexes. That's what we called it, part 1. And just so to let you know, we're going to have a part 2 and 3. Part 2 we'll have the men on here, and they're going to talk about networking because men network very differently than women. And then part 3 we'll have everybody on here, men and women, and they will talk about how we can improve how we network. Because one of the things I wanted to bring out with this networking is that there are a lot of powerful women in the world, and sometimes as guys, especially some older people, we sometimes act like it's the 1950s, and it's not. We have to be in 2024. Women have a place at the table. They have a seat at the table. They're powerful. They hold the keys to a lot of power and wealth. And so you can't treat them like you used to treat people back in the 1950s. So I think most men know that, but I think there are a few men. And this was some observations that I have seen. So that's why I wanted to get this on the calendar. That's why I wanted to have a show about it. And I hope you really did enjoy it. Now, this is just my view. You may have a different view. And this show is about, if you have a different view, let us know. We, it doesn't bother us. We'll tackle it. And maybe you even have an idea for a show. So please like, subscribe, and comment. And please do that because it helps the algorithm. It helps us as a brand, as sort of the podcast, so people know who we are. Tell your friends about it, right? You might have, there might be something on here. Tell your kids, whoever you want to tell. Tell everybody. We want help in spreading the word about our podcast. I know that people say podcasts are like, you know what, because everybody got one. It seems like everybody does have one. But really, the purpose of this podcast is not for me just to come on here. As you can see, I don't have a guest, right? We didn't really tape anything in the month of January because we were busy making money. So didn't have time to do that. But in February, we got some good guests coming up. And maybe I should talk about the guests right now. Now, my producer is off stage, so I have her on here because I didn't want to seem like I was talking to nobody. Like, that's kind of weird. I don't know about you, but I like to talk to people. I don't like to talk to nobody. So she's off stage laughing at me as I talk because she knows I don't like to talk to any, just nobody. So let me tell you some of the shows that we got coming up. So some of the shows that we got coming up is we have ATP. ATP is the Austin Transit Partnership. We have some people from that organization here in the state of Texas. They are building a light rail system in Austin. And so they're going to come on here and talk about the project, some of the contracts that they have coming out. And so I think that'll be an interesting show. And please listen up for that. On the next show after that, we're going to talk about COMTO. So if some of you don't know what COMTO is the Conference of Minority Transportation Officials. We have the president and CEO coming on board, and she's going to talk about COMTO and why you should join and what COMTO can do for you as an organization. A show after that is the Federal 8A program. Now, this is a show I had to do a lot of research on I have a buddy who's deeply involved in the federal aid program. And we started talking about it because, as you know, and if you don't know, that program has been under attack. And all of this started with the affirmative action challenge that happened in the courts not too long ago. Because of that, the federal aid program has been challenged. In addition to that, not only the federal aid, but the DBE program is also being challenged. So we're going to talk about the federal aid program. We're going to talk about probably the DBE program. And last week, I had the privilege of attending the APTA Business Members Conference in Puerto Rico. Yeah, don't bleed for me. Yeah, I was in beautiful Puerto Rico, and yeah, I was working. I got some vacation in too. Now I'm not gonna lie, but I was there working hard, trying to make some connections, and I did. But anyway, I digress. And then the DOT was there. You know, Department of Transportation from the FTA, they were there, and we were asking questions about the DBE program. And if you don't know, some of the things on the DBE program are going to be changed, especially the net worth value. I think right now it's $1.3 million. If you're under that, you can be a DBE, but if you're over that, you make that much money and have that much net worth, you cannot be a DBE. I think they're going to raise it, but they would not speak about it. They would not comment about it. They say that it's going to be out by spring of this year. We shall see. That's important to a lot of businesses across the country. And the reason that is important, especially for the DBE program, the DBE program is just important in general. Why is it important? Well, I hate to say it, but if there was no DBE program, some of us would not be used on projects because they would use other people. There's no incentive. Whenever you have a federally mandated program, you have to use DBEs, and usually the federal government or sets what the parameters should be, 20, 30%, whatever the case may be. So that's coming under a little bit of attack, and it's important for people to know. If you want to know more about the DBE program and how that all works, I implore you to go to my LinkedIn. There was a disparity study produced, and it talks about how in this disparity studies throughout the country that a lot of Black and Latinos are not getting contracts, usually less than 1%. That's not the way that it was outlined. So there are companies out there playing games. Some of us know who they are. But that's why I started my company, MSS Strategic Partners, to help companies find qualified DBEs and small businesses to help them with their projects. And so that's something that we're going to delve into. And that's when I talk about 2024, the year of difference. That is one of the things that's going to be a difference. We're going to talk about those subjects. And we're not going to offend anybody. And if you're offended, that means that that's your issue. I don't know what to tell you. The facts are the facts. Less than 1% of Black and Hispanics get government contracts. That's a problem. That really is a big problem. So we're going to talk about that stuff. And then I met a gentleman last week who is the president of Latinos in Transit. Latinos in Transit is a fairly new organization. They've been around for a few years. I don't know exactly how many years, but they're gaining ground and they're doing some good things, especially in this infrastructure world. Diversity is important. Harold's going to come on and talk to us about the organization and how you can join. So those are some of the people that we're going to have on the program in the next month or so. We have some other people scheduled, but I just wanted to give you a little bit of what's coming on. So let's go back to 2024, the year of difference. How are we going to make a difference? We're here at MSS and the $1 Million Business Podcast. We're going to talk about subjects that for some people is going to be uncomfortable. The DBE program, the networking, some of the things that I see in the industry. Now, it will be uncomfortable for you if you take umbrage with it. If you don't take umbrage with it, it won't bother you, right? We have to change some of the things that go on in this infrastructure world. Sometimes we're doing the same things over and over again, and we're asking for different results. you can't get different results if you do the same things over and over again. And so here at MSS and the $1 Million Business Podcast, and just so you know, MSS is my company that makes the money and has the software. And the $1 Million Business Podcast is just an advertisement for that. And also it allows us to get into the industry and talk to people because, I meet a lot of people. We have some interesting conversations. And some of these conversations, I want you to understand and I want you to have and learn from it because I know I learn from things that way when I have conversations with people. Just going to the conference last week, I learned a lot from people that I had conversations with. So most of us, that's the way we learn. So we're going to try to make a difference. But what I'm going to say to you, especially as small businesses, how are you going to make a difference? One of the things that comes up when we go for these contracts and when we actually put people on contracts and help them team, sometimes the contractor will ask, what's their differentiator? And I'm going to ask you, what's your differentiator? You got to have a differentiator. There's a lot of businesses out there, but why should they choose you? So in 2024, I'm saying, let's make a difference. Let's have a differentiator. I appreciate you listening to me. I'm not the best at this, and I guess I'm going to get better. I like to talk, but I like to talk to people. And one of the things I want to talk about also, too, is how we produce the podcast, right? It's a lot of work. I'm not going to sit here and say it's not. It's a lot of work getting people's schedules together and everything else. But one of the things that we do with this podcast is we started the podcast kind of raw. Why is that? Well, I can afford to get a fancy studio and the lights and everything else, but I didn't want to do that. Why? Because I wanted to show people that everything matures. You just don't come into business and make $1 million. You just don't come into a podcast and then everybody's listening to you, right? We start slow. We start with basics. We have a microphone. We have a site that we use. We have a website. Those are the things that we do to get the podcast. Now, as we start to do better, make a couple dollars off the podcast, we're going to get better. Eventually, we're going to have a podcast studio. But I want you to see the maturation of the $1 Million Business Podcast, right? Part of this whole process is that we want to get to make $1 million. Now, I'll be honest with you, I have not made $1 million. I'm getting close, but I haven't made $1 million yet. But that's why we say, so as I learn things, I want to impart this knowledge to you also. So that's why I wanted to come on here. We haven't been on in a while. People have said, hey, Steph, where's your podcast? You said that you were going to give us 2 times a month. I've been busy trying to make a couple dollars. That's what I've been trying to do. Okay. So listen, I appreciate everything that you guys do. I appreciate you listening to the podcast. I hope this has been interesting for you. From time to time, I'm going to come over here and just talk to you, right? Because I think it's important for you to see who I am and just kind of get this fellowship with me and kind of understand why I'm doing what I do. Because sometimes when you have guests, you can't do all that. You can't put all that information on there. So this is going to be a very short podcast. It's not going to be very long. I just wanted to come in here and talk to you. Look out for us next week. We'll have a new podcast up. And thank you for listening. And thank you for following us here at the $1 Million Business Podcast.
I hope you enjoyed the show today. The information we discussed today was just that, information only. It is not specific advice. If you take action following something you heard today, it is important to make sure you get professional advice about your unique situation before you proceed. Please reach out to us if you have any questions or if there's another topic you would like to see explored. And if you know someone who might benefit from the show, remember to tell them about us. You can find the $1 Million Business Podcast on all podcast platforms or our visual podcast on YouTube. Thank you for viewing and listening.